We're talking to Coach Joe Gilliam from Tennessee State University. And of course, Coach, you were giving us so much extraordinary information before we ended that first segment. Let's allow you to simply pick up where you left off.
Well, when Dr. Davis brought us here, and he explained this to us, his vision for Tennessee State was for Tennessee A&I at the time, was for Tennessee A&I to enter the Missouri Valley Conference. Now, the name of that today has changed, but he thought that was the conference that best suited Tennessee A&I, and he was right. And as the years have ensued, the more of this time passes, the more that Dr. Davis's vision was 50 years ahead of its time. Yes, Tennessee State should have been in that conference. It certainly should not be in the OVC, and of course that's another story. But we had fine success in those years there. Primarily we divided to Shannon Little being our top recruiter, and he was excellent there. He liked the road. He knew people all over the South, and he had a good eye for players. We would discuss, in many instances, when Shannon was here, exactly the kind of football players we were looking for. We always wanted tall linemen, and so Shannon was a little in disagreement there because he thought that centers and guards on the offensive line should be shorter, and then the tackles and tight ends should be taller. And my contention was that if we had tall players, we could fit them into any position. It was our job to get the talent. And I was learning this as we're talking with Shannon. I'm learning this from Ed Temple. That's another story there. But at this point, when I discovered Doctor, here I am at Tennessee A&I, and I'm a colleague of what the world felt arguably was one of the best women's track coaches in the world. And he was my colleague. And to me, that was just an ideal situation for me to learn, because the way I viewed it was that Coach Temple had an eye for the kind of talent that would make the best runners. So I envisioned that while there must be a certain kind of talent that makes a football player. And then he wanted outstanding talent because his idea, and I thought it was different from anyone I ever met, his idea was to get talented people and train them to be great. Then make the next step, make the greatest of the great, because I visioned that an Olympic gold medal winner is the greatest of the great. That was what Ed Temple dealt with. He dealt not with the good, not with the great. He dealt with the greatest of the great. And I thought this was excellent. And I would watch him like a hawk, all the things he did. And I learned 4 things from him that I carried from that time all the way until today in dealing with athletes. Number 1, as I said, you have to select an athlete who has the physical natures that you need. You would not want, if you were a track coach, you would not want a short-legged person because you're running. And so there were certain things in football that certain body types lean to, and I believe it even right to today. Secondly, I learned from Coach Temple that you had to have a program that pressed and forced the participant toward his limits. And I have not met an athlete in all the years who knew his limits. So I think it behooves the coach to push toward the limits, wherever they are. I learned that from coach. You had to have a program that was stringent, that worked them, because you could not become the greatest of the great without an extraordinary work ethic. I got that from him. And then thirdly, that you had to become a part of their life. And as I look back in athletics, and I think, Doctor, this might extend to other things in life, all the great ones, there's a person back in their life that was instrumental more than anyone else in helping them to attain their greatness. And that person with these young ladies was Ed Temple. And Muhammad Ali had a person back, Blackburn, his trainer, who pushed him to be his greatest. I don't know of an athlete who does not have in his background a person that was instrumental more than anyone else in him attaining his greatness. And that was the spot that Ed Temple occupied in the lives of his girls. He was the one that they looked to. So it became imperative that he become a part of their life. So, you know, Ed Temple didn't like for football players to date his girls.
I understood that.
See, and the final thing was that you in order to lead young people beyond what they think their limits are, you must be, and we're talking about school now, you must be concerned with their academics. See, as a teacher, Ed Temple's girls just were not allowed to miss classes. They had to do their work, or they had to answer to Ed Temple. This was way before we had tutoring programs and those kinds of study halls and those kinds of things. Ed Temple led, he led that thing of academic excellence.
Let me interrupt you here for the last time here, Coach. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Talking to legendary coach